Welcome to the City of Superior's historic home tour. Not all of the houses on this tour are Victorian, but they are houses of historical interest in Superior. The house styles will be identified as much as possible. We have not included every possible historical home, just many. First, let's give you some information to aid in your adventure. Victorian houses are architecturally commonly referred to as the Victorian style, but this style is a period in history that roughly corresponds to the time when Queen Victoria ruled Britain from 1837 to 1901. It includes a variety of substyles and was preferred for expensive houses to create the impression of a majestic presence and ornate elements. During this time, industrialization brought many innovations in architecture. Victorian homes encourage freedom of expression and creativity. It's hard to find two homes that are exactly alike. Here are some typical features: round or octagonal turrets, towers, and balconies, steep roofs with intersecting gables, windows designed in different patterns, sizes, and styles with leaded or colored glass. Rooms are hidden in towers, bays, and dormers. A fireplace or two, typically in the center of the house, by the kitchen, or in the dining room. Triangular-shaped ornaments are placed on top of the building. Railings made from iron and painted in accordance. Use of colorful or plain bricks. Sliding sash and tipped bay windows. Church-like rooftop finials. 3 or 2 stories, with the third story usually for the servants. Large wraparound porches. And lopsidedness. The Victorian interior design was muddled, superimposed, decorative, and peculiar. Insides of Victorian-era houses often included grand staircases, complex layouts with various rooms, including formal dining rooms and libraries. The interior of Victorian houses also includes high ceilings, lavishly carved wood cladding, enhancing and decorative fireplaces, stained glass windows, geometric tiled hallways, heavy hangings or drapes, decorative wallpapers, furniture of dark wood, and hardwood floors enclosed with rugs. Let's begin. You can walk, which is healthful, bike, which is healthful and faster, or drive the tour. No judgment. And you may break it up into segments and do it at different times. You have options. If you are driving, we recommend that you pause the video after you receive the directions to the next house. The pause will be noted in the video. We begin at the northwest corner of Bloom and 6th Street, facing west. Park by the band shell. Across the street at 609 Bloom Street is the Catchall House. Gustav S. and Leela Catchall, the local jeweler, built the Catchall House in 1898. They sold it 2 years later to Edward M. and Emma R. Lawrence, who lived there for 8 years. In 1908, it was sold to Elmer Donahue. The current house was built in the 1920s. In 1938, William D. Wrench bought both this house and the adjoining house at a sheriff's sale and lived there for 30 years. Bill Wrench was the father of Dr. Dwayne Wrench and the grandfather of Bill Blauvelt, the current publisher of the Superior Express. Turn south on Bloom to 3rd Street and then turn east. Go 1 block. At Converse, turn south, continue south on Converse, and stop at the corner of Converse and 2nd Street. Look southeast and you will see a light gray house with white trim, which is the George Brown House at 613 East 2nd Street. The George Brown House was built in 1881 and was originally at the current site of the Broadstone Memorial Hospital. George Brown was a homesteader and furniture merchant. The house has a steep roof line and an interesting second-floor porch. When the Browns moved to California, the house was leased to the Hirsch brothers, both doctors, and they had their residence and hospital in the building. Eveline Broadstone bought the property in 1912 as a summer home and residence for her mother and her brother while their downtown apartment was under construction. Eveline was in London during this time working for the Vesties. In 1927, the now Evelyn, Lady Vesty, deeded the land and house to Broadstone Memorial Hospital. In March of 1928, Edgar Thompson, a mason and carpenter, purchased the middle lots on the 600 block of 2nd Street. He bought and moved the Brown Broadstone house to that location to use as his family's home. At that time, 2nd Street was Nebraska Highway 3 South. Now look to the southwest of 2nd Street, and you will see the Hoops House, a Dutch colonial at 545 East 2nd Street. It was built in 1909 by H.G. Hoops. Mr. Hoops manufactured and sold incubators. It has been home to an automobile dealer, a railroad conductor, a retired farmer, and a jeweler. Turn west on 2nd Street, proceed 3 blocks to Kansas, turn north, park around the middle of the block. At 247 North Kansas is the Pissarro Edsel House, built in 1885 by the Pissarros. It's a 3-story Queen Anne Victorian residence. Minnie and Irving Edsel purchased it in 1901. It sits on a large corner lot and has an open stairway, oak woodwork, and 5 bedrooms. The Edsels owned a large pond at the southwest corner of Superior. They earned their living by putting up ice each winter and selling ice and ice cream throughout the summer. When ice was replaced by refrigeration in the 1920s, the pond remained a summer swimming and fishing hole and a winter skating rink. Turn west on 3rd Street. Go 2 blocks west to Central Avenue. Turn north. Proceed to just past 6th Street. Look for the 3rd house on the west at 637 North Central. It is beige with brown trim and a lovely octagon front porch. The Felt House is a classic revival post-Victorian built in 1909 by Frank Felt. Mr. Felt was a prominent merchant, grocer, and civic leader. In 1944, Ira Sheets purchased the home and then passed it on to his son Emmett Sheets. It has the original fireplace with a carved oak mantel and bronze fireplace cover. Continue north on Central Avenue past 7th Street. Stop at 715 North Central. The 2nd house on the west side is the Templeton House. The John and Josephine Templeton House is a typical pioneer house. The Victorian stylings were added after the turn of the century when the extension on the front and the front porch were added. It was then converted to a rooming house. The rear porch was added after 1912. The north 1-story addition was done in the late 1950s. The main part of the house, including the roof line, is original. Continue north. Stop at 8th Street. On the northwest corner of Central Avenue and 8th Street is 807 North Central, the Vautrain House. The Vautrain House, a post-Victorian, was built by Joseph Lee Vautrain in 1910. Mr. Vautrain was in the U.S. Postal Service and took his mortgage from Eveline Broadstone. It reverted to Miss Broadstone in 1915. The C.L. Brinkerhoff family occupied the home from 1920 to 1956. On the northeast corner of Central Avenue and 8th Street, at 110 East 8th Street, is the Wilson Shayer House, built by Professor Isaac Wilson and his wife Emma in 1889. Professor Wilson was the superintendent of Superior Schools until 1897. The house passed through the Enos Lester family to Mrs. Bertha Shayer. Amelia, Bertha's daughter, remodeled the house in 1917 to the current Victorian Georgian style. Amelia Shayer gave piano lessons and lived in the house for 25 years. Amelia's father was Caesar Shayer, the builder of the Union Hotel. The rear addition was done in 1968. Turn east on 8th Street. At the next corner, Commercial, turn south, Park, and on the northeast corner of 8th Street and Commercial at 808 North Commercial is the Roy Hunter House. This Queen Anne Victorian was built in 1906 by Roy W. and Nanny Hunter. Roy was the son of Superior's first merchant, Alexander Hunter, and was 5 years old when they arrived in Superior. Roy and his brother, A.E. Hunter, took over the store in 1893. Later, Roy went into real estate and insurance. Look to the east. At 750 North Commercial, on the southeast corner of Commercial and 8th Street, is the Adams House, built in 1883 by Sarah Adams. The present building was a remodeled project by James Henry Morrison, a prominent saloon keeper. He completed this Queen Anne Victorian in 1894. The All Faiths Chapel was added in 1974. Today, it is the McGrew Price Funeral Home. Go just a couple of houses further south on Commercial. On the west side at 729 North Commercial Avenue is the Miller House. The 3-story home was built in 1897 by J.A. and Sarah M. Miller, but they only lived there for 4 years. Mr. Miller was a Superior clothing merchant. There were various owners for the next 11 years, then it became the home of John and Lena Young. Mr. Young founded the First State Savings Bank of Superior. In 1924, Dr. Fred W. and Eva May Maxey purchased the home, and they lived there for 30 years. It also served as Dr. Maxey's office. Continue south on Commercial, turn east at 7th Street, go 1 block, and stop. On the northeast corner of 7th Street and Kansas at 708 North Kansas is the Bradshaw House, a Queen Anne Victorian built in 1892 by Dr. Horatio Nelson Bradshaw and his wife Eliza Jane. Dr. Bradshaw, a pioneer medical doctor, helped found the first bank in Superior, Bank of Superior, and was its vice president. He was the co-founder of Superior's Commercial Club, which is now the Chamber of Commerce, and was its president when reorganized in 1899. Their daughter Genevieve married Wallace Warren Kendall, Superior's pioneer druggist. Turn south on Kansas Street and park. At 650 North Kansas on the southeast corner of 7th Street and Kansas is the King House. Orrin Scott King and his wife Mary built this Victorian residence in 1894. Orrin was a painter and decorator and in partnership with his brother Isaac in real estate. In 1904, they sold the house to William F. Niehaus, the manager of the Nye Schneider Fowler Lumber and Grain. Look west. At the southwest corner of 7th Street and Kansas, 653 North Kansas, is the Guthrie House. This Queen Anne Victorian features a large square turret. Robert and Frances A. Guthrie built the house in 1881. Robert was the older brother in the Guthrie Brothers Flour Mill, and they were primarily responsible for the construction of the dam on the Republican River in 1878 and the subsequent 1.5-mile mill race to bring water power to the mill. Superior's electric power was generated by the Guthries until the mill burned down in 1916. The Southern Nebraska Power Company took over and built a new electricity generating plant on the mill site. In 1906, Guthrie sold the house to J.S. Montgomery for $5,500. The Montgomery family lived there for over 30 years. Further south on Kansas on the west side at 631 North Kansas is the Day House, which is currently white, has a round turret and a white picket fence. The Day House was built in 1881 by George L. Day, a dentist and Superior's first lumber dealer. George gave the property at 631 North Kansas Street to his bride, Isabel Barber, in 1880, and they built their home there that year. Though it started as a simple square structure, it has been enlarged twice. The Day family occupied the residence for 110 years, selling it in 1991. The next house on the northwest corner of 6th Street and Kansas at 609 North Kansas is the Mendel House. This post-Victorian residence replaced the original 1881 house built by J.F. Bradshaw, a restaurateur. The current home was built in 1917 by George L. Day for his daughter, Josephine G. Day, upon her marriage to Bert C. Mendel. Mr. Mendel operated a marble and monument works at the current site of the Napa store. Mr. Mendel was active in civic affairs, served on the city council, and in many service organizations. Mrs. Mendel taught piano. The Mendels lived in the house for 45 years. The first residential water well in Superior was on the property line between the Mendel and Day House that is just to the north. Cross over 6th Street and park. On the southeast corner of 6th and Kansas at 548 North Kansas Street is the Lunt House, built in 1906. This late Victorian house was the home of Albert M. and Marilla Lunt. Mr. Lunt was a prominent attorney. They lived in the house for 16 years. Harvey and Alta Bickett were the next owners, and they lived there for 22 years. The house was then sold to John Knox McKee and his wife Lottie Frances Tuzalin McKee, and it was their home for 20 years. Knox McKee built the prosperous Superior Livestock Commission Company. The second house on the west at 537 North Kansas is the Simonton House, built in 1883 by attorney Robert Simonton and his wife Louise. The large Victorian knew several owners until 1889, when it was purchased by Frederick and Wilhelmina Leyenberger. Lionberger was a commercial traveler who established a boot and shoe store in downtown Superior. The Lionberger's son, Earl, a graduate chemical engineer, returned to Superior upon the death of his father in 1917. He took over the store, moved into the house, and then it stayed in the family until 1977 for a total of 88 years in the Lionberger family. Continue south on Kansas Street, turn east at 5th Street, turn north at Dakota. Go 2 blocks and stop at the end of Dakota at 7th Street. Look at the southwest corner of Dakota and 7th Street. Joseph B. and Sarah A. Hanna came to Superior in 1892, acquired about 1,000 acres of land southwest of town, and began a ranching operation. They purchased this lot at 653 North Dakota in 1893 and built the J. Hanna House in 1896. Their 5 children inherited the house in 1933 and rented it out until selling it in 1946 to Grace Douthit, who converted it into apartments. It has since been restored to its original Victorian beauty. At 340 East 7th, on the northwest corner of Dakota and 7th, is the Beale House. This 3-story Queen Anne Victorian was built in 1881 by Uriah Beale, whose family occupied the house until 1920, when it was sold to Joseph A. Weir. It returned to the Beale family in 1930, and they installed Superior's first underground sprinkler lawn system. After several owners, Ray Hunter purchased it in 1949. The Hollywood writer and producer Lewis Hunter and Eileen Hunter Sweeney are the current owners. On the northeast corner is a Queen Anne shingle Victorian house. Wallace W. Kendall built this house, the Kendall House, at 412 East 7th Street in 1889. It was prefabricated and shipped to Superior in a railroad boxcar. In 1885, he deeded the lot to his wife-to-be, Lily G. Bradshaw, daughter of Superior's medical doctor. Mr. Kendall was Superior's first druggist. In 1880, he built a frame building at 325 North Central, where Walt's Furniture is today. On June 22, 1909, the house was sold to Frank and Rosa Bossemeyer. Frank was a partner in Bossemeyer Grain Company. The Bossemeyers occupied the house for 35 years. An interesting feature of the house is the 30-foot by 40-foot ballroom with a raised stage on the 3rd floor. It is the only Victorian home in Superior listed in the Nebraska Historic Sites Registry. Turn east on 7th Street, go across Bloom Street, park at the park to view the Adams House at 514 East 7th Street, 7th Street and Bloom. The prominent and widely known Captain Clare and Abby Adams built the Adams House in 1886 and named it the Cedars for the twin row of trees that lined the front walk at the time. Captain Adams was a colonel during the Civil War, a member of the Nebraska State Legislature, and a candidate for Congress of the United States. Abby Adams was the president of the National Women's Relief Corps and founded Superior's Daughters of the American Revolution. The Nuckolls County towns Montclair and Cadams were named for him. Originally, there was a beautiful wrought iron fence accented by 100 rose bushes. Continue east on 7th Street. Turn north at the next block, Converse. Converse curves west into 8th Street. Stop at the corner of 8th and Idaho. At this corner on the northeast side is the Ernest Bossemeyer Jr. House at 814 Idaho. Bloom turns into Idaho at this corner. The Ernest Bossemeyer Jr. House was built in 1911. Mr. Bossemeyer spent some time in California and fell in love with the house styles there. The white Mediterranean-style house with the red tile roof was designed by the Los Angeles builder Ye Planry. A feature of the house is the atrium, with its stained glass ceiling under a skylight over a sunken tile floor with a planter in the center. When Mr. Bossemeyer died in 1939, the house was sold to John A. Mullett. He and his son Albert converted it into a funeral home. In 1968, it was sold to Mr. Dare Williams. Since then, the Williams family has operated it as a funeral home. Directly across 8th on the south side is the Harvey House, or the Broadstone House. At 753 North Bloom Street, this large white bungalow-style residence was built in 1914 by Cyrus W. Harvey. In 1921, Joseph A. Weir, a rancher and banker, purchased the house. Ownership was passed to George Aldrich and his wife Alberta May. George Aldrich was the son of a former Nebraska governor and a cashier at the State Bank of Superior, where Mr. Weir was president. On July 21, 1924, Eveline Broadstone purchased the house for her mother, Matilda Broadstone. Mrs. Broadstone found it increasingly difficult to climb the long flight of stairs to their downtown apartment. Eveline married William Baron Vestey on August 1, 1924. Matilda Broadstone died before she could move into the house. It became a rental until it was deeded to the Broadstone Memorial Hospital in May of 1940. It was then sold to an attorney, Robert H. Downing, and his wife Juanita in 1943. On the northwest side of 8th and Idaho Street at 807 Idaho is the Dedrick House, a Queen Anne Victorian cottage that Charles E. and Hallie Dedrick built in 1901. Dedrick was the founder and publisher of the Superior Express newspaper. He owned the newspaper until September of 1931, when he sold it to W. W. Driggs. A small mudroom porch was added to the back when the house was lifted in the 1980s. The fireplace was removed from the parlor, but the original fireplace mantel is in the basement. Proceed west on 8th Street to Kansas Street. Turn north and park. The Fisher House at 324 East 8th Street is on the northeast corner of 8th and Kansas. The Fisher House is currently dark purple with white trim. The Queen Anne Victorian residence was built by George L. and Jenny Fisher in 1900. Mr. Fisher operated the Fisher Drug Store, located in downtown Superior. Lee and Mary Williams bought the house with all furniture included in 1951. Jenny Fisher moved to Lincoln to be near her daughter. Mrs. Fisher sent a clock and table back down from Lincoln with the message, "These should have stayed with the house." A little to the northwest, the second house at 833 North Kansas is the Silver House. The Victorian cottage was built in 1901 by John M. and Daisy Silver. The builder was the Emerson brothers, the foremost contractor of many prominent Superior residences and also the Broadstone Memorial Hospital. Mr. Silver left his job as an agent for the Burlington and Missouri Railroad to enter the soft drink business in 1909. He purchased the Union Bottling Works. In 1917, the Silvers acquired the Coca-Cola franchise for the area and began bottling Coke in a remodeled brick livery building located at the northeast corner of 2nd and National. For the next 21 years, any Superior grade schooler showing an A on their report card at the plant got a free bottle of Coke. This lovely house has only had 3 owners in 120 years. Continue north on Kansas. Cross 9th Street. The second house on the west is the Smith House at 929 North Kansas. The Smith House was built in 1889 by Edward J. Smith, a men's clothing merchant. Mr. Smith and his bride, Mary E. Hartzler, a widow, moved in during June. Edward died in 1903 at the age of 51. Mary Elizabeth lived on in the home until her death on March 21st of 1944 at the age of 90. The next house to the north of the Smith House is the Spohn Hartzler House at 939 North Kansas. It is an excellent example of the prairie style initiated by the famous architect Frank Lloyd Wright. It was built in 1917 by George J. Spohn, a prominent pioneer farmer, rancher, and landlord. In 1924, Harvey B. and Elizabeth M. Hartzler, a partner in the Hartzler Brothers Wholesale Grocery located at 2nd Street and Central Avenue, purchased the house and lived there for 19 years. At 10th Street, which is immediate, turn west. Stop at the corner of 10th Street and Commercial. On the southwest corner is the George Schooler House at 945 North Commercial. The George Schooler House was built in 1889 by John N. Hick and purchased at a sheriff's sale in 1898 by George and Kate Schooler. They lived there for 68 years, making many improvements and additions. Mr. Schooler, originally from Scotland, came to Superior in 1892. He was briefly in partnership with John Templeton. Then, in 1900, he built a grain elevator on the southeast corner of 2nd and Bloom Streets. Later, he operated the concrete elevator between 1st and 2nd Streets at National. Mr. Schooler's elevator company extended from Superior to Kansas City and Omaha. Still in existence, the Schooler Company is now headquartered in Omaha. Turn right on Commercial for 1 block. Turn east at 11th Street for 2 blocks. Turn north on Dakota. Park and look west to see the Grandy House at 1105 North Dakota. Dr. William D. Grandy and his wife Evelyn built the Grandy House in 1910. When Evelyn Grandy was widowed in 1919, she sold the house to Carl C. and Karen M. Jensen. The family lived there for 57 years. The original style was post-Victorian, but later owners took the structure to full Queen Anne Victorian, with the addition of the gazebo porch, Victorian colors, and spindles. The family room and carriage house additions accent the Victorian style. Continue north on Dakota for 2 blocks, turn east at 13th Street and stop. You will be at the south side of 1313 Idaho Street, the W. Kendall House. The W. Kendall House is a modernistic revival-style residence that was built in 1912 by Wallace and Lillian Kendall. Notice the grand entryway with the beautiful windows in all the rooms. The core of this house is Kendall's original drugstore building, formerly located on Central Avenue, which he erected in 1879. In 1912, Mr. Kendall put up a new building, moving his original wood store into the middle of the street where his renter, Ned Preston, did business until the new building was complete. Then the wooden store was moved here and completely remodeled into this brick structure. Turn south on Idaho Street, drive for 3 blocks, turn east on 10th Street, turn south on Washington. At 931 Washington Street is the A. Hunter House, recessed in from the street, situated in the center of the block between Washington and Idaho. Alexander Alex E. Hunter Sr. and his wife Jean Marie, Jenny, built the house in 1878 when there were no railroads into Superior. Mr. Hunter was Superior's first merchant, and his store was located on Central Avenue. All the materials for this house, as well as all of the store's merchandise, were hauled by team and wagon from the railhead at Edgar, a 2-day, 30-mile trip. When the house was finished, the Hunters could see the front of their downtown store from their front porch. When assistance was needed at the store, a signal was given and help would scurry down the hill. The house sitting in the middle of the block with a white picket fence surrounding it and an expansive wrap porch made a lovely scene of Victorian living. The exterior of the house has been remodeled and a significant number of Victorian features were eliminated. Drive ahead and stop at the end of Washington Street and 9th. At the southwest corner, 849 Washington, you will see the beautiful Southern Colonial House built in 1912 by Peter Johnson, son-in-law of the founder of the Henningsen Produce Company. The Crilly family has owned and occupied the house since 1936, so it is appropriately referred to as the Crilly Mansion. Many interesting assets have been carefully preserved, including murals by a Danish artist, 2 large fireplaces, oak and mahogany woodwork, leaded glass entryways, a large horseshoe stairway, and a summer porch off the master bedroom. Turn west on 9th Street, go to Idaho Street, and stop. This is the Johnston House at 856 North Idaho on the southeast corner of 9th and Idaho. It was built in 1884 by Joseph Stan Johnston and his wife, the former Ophelia Spear. The house passed to his son H. Clyde Johnston in August of 1906. Clyde's wife was the former Margaret H. Maggie Guthrie. Clyde and Maggie were half of Eveline Broadstone's quartet. Maggie's sister Ella and her husband Claude Shaw formed the other half. The quartet were guests of the Lady Vestey for the coronation of Edward VII. They stayed in her London home, Kingswood. Lady Vestey visited them frequently until 1935, when hostilities in Europe made it difficult for her to travel to America. Turn south onto Idaho Street. Idaho turns into Bloom at 8th Street. Continue south to the city park, turn east at 6th, and you are back where you started. We hope your trip down our history's lane leads you home safely. For a lot more history and artifacts, go 1 block further east on 6th and you will see the Nuckolls County Historical Museum. The museum offers a rich immersion into another time and place, the one that created the foundation for our current lives. Thank you for taking this journey of the historic houses of Superior.